Hey everybody, it's Georgia Rose from the Soul Space. It is Monday night at 7 o'clock. I'm not live because there is a huge blizzard, and I live on the northeast of the United States, and we are all completely snowed in. The studio isn't even open. Again, this is the second time this has happened this year in 2026. They're calling a historical blizzard. So hopefully I will be able to get out of my house at some point in the next couple of days, but we're not talking inches, we're talking feet of snow. So I am broadcasting to you from my home, and I hope that you are still tuned in, even though I'm not live. And let's get started. So, the last few weeks, I've done the show really heavy on astrology, and I've talked a lot about the alignments of certain planets, especially the Neptune and Saturn alignment at the first degrees of Aries. And we talked a lot about that on last week's show and the show before. And a lot of that was about really the energy shifts that we're seeing in the world and how we also can utilize that energy best for our own potential and guidance and things like that. Tonight's show, I'm not going to talk so much about the astrology. Tonight on the podcast, I really want to talk a little bit just about what I'm seeing the energy being outside of our homes, our hearts, our universe, and also within ourselves, and what I'm seeing as the big shift that's starting to occur. There is some astrology this week, the last week of February 2026, that does really play into what I'm going to talk about tonight, which is taking back our power. And we're seeing that a lot out in the universe, and we're also feeling it a lot in our day-to-day lives. How do we take our power back? Where are the places that we allowed ourselves to maybe be diminished or ignored, or where we've even abandoned ourselves? So I want to talk about that tonight, talk a little teeny bit about the astrology with that, but mostly I would like to really, visit with you guys and tell you some of the things that have been on my mind and some of the experiences that I've had as far as taking my power back and my work in progress with that, and where I, am finding this particular current energetic, I guess we could say, portal, contributing to helping me take my agency back and being more powerful and stepping into my real, ability to control and create my life. And also those places where I'm still struggling a little bit. I think it's a really important conversation to have, because I think that many of us are finding ourselves in the same place, experiencing the same things and the same changes. So this week we have Mercury stationing retrograde at 22 degrees of Pisces. So Mercury in Pisces is always a little bit floaty, a little bit dreamy, a little bit of illusion. It's going retrograde, so it'll stay in Pisces for a little longer. And that can make it harder for us to really, distinguish between reality and fantasy. But it's also great for the subject matter that we're talking about tonight, because Mercury in Pisces is going to break the illusions. It's going to really make us sometimes see reality. And sometimes, because we can connect better to other realms and our own intuition, it helps us to actually see what is that illusion and help us understand where we want to go in the future. Because don't forget, once Mercury finishes up in Pisces, it too is going to go into Aries, exactly where Saturn and Neptune are. And eventually all that pileup of planets that we had in Capricorn a month ago is in Pisces now, is all headed for Aries. And Aries is all about taking back our personal power, being independent, feeling strong. So we're going to talk about that tonight. We also have Mars squaring Uranus on February 27th. As I said, Mercury goes retrograde on the 26th. But on the 27th, Mars squares Uranus, and that's a really powerful energy. Mars is our assertion, our ambition, the god of war. Mars is why we do the things we do, what our motivation is. And Uranus is that sudden shocking change. So when Mars and Uranus square, which is a conversation of tension, many times the things that are holding us back, not allowing us to come into our power, not allowing us to feel liberated and free, really come into view. And we start to see things in a different light. Remember that phrase, seeing things in a different light. Because Uranus is going to awaken us to where it is we're losing power, and where it is we can take some power back, where it is we can assert ourselves a little more. So I'm going to jump right into jump right into the subject matter at hand. And hopefully it'll make sense to you and you'll be inspired a little bit, as I have been inspiring myself with some of these little gems and tidbits. If I seem like I misspeak a lot this particular Soul Space podcast, I know oftentimes I speak very eloquently. Yes, I do. And I speak very well. lately I've been feeling this energy of the switch of Neptune and Saturn into um, Aries and a lot of the other planetary egresses that we have. It's been making the energy very speeded up. I'm sure you guys have felt that way, felt time was speeded up a little bit. And so for me, what that does sometimes is I'm very verbal and I talk very fast to begin with. So coordinating my thoughts is not always easy in this energy. I'll try and slow down a little bit so that this can be a really good podcast. But that's why if you see me stumbling a little bit more than usual, it's because I'm having a lot of downloads, a lot of psychic energy against the backdrop of these really speeded up, gear shifting, kind of, we're now going a million miles down the highway energy. And I know everyone is feeling that. I get a lot of emails and texts and things from all of you saying that, what is going on? I feel all this nervous energy. I can't relax. That is definitely the planets where they are right now, that Neptune, Saturn going into Aries, which is a fire sign. It's also a lot of planets that just passed over Pluto. And Uranus is getting ready to go into Gemini, which is a very fast moving air sign. And air feeds fire, like I said on the last show. So we have Uranus going into Gemini come July, feeding the fire that already is in Aries. And that's going to speed up even more because as spring approaches, we have a lot of planets going into Aries, and we're going to have a lot of Aries fire. So I will try to slow down, but I got to tell you, it's like someone lit a rocket ship in my energy. So part of this reclaiming our power, which I've been working on now for years, but anyone who has had a past of abuse or had a not so picture perfect childhood always works on taking their power back because we've been repressed or suppressed in some way. And almost everybody on the planet has these days. I feel like when I look at the generations, my mom and dad, and even my grandparents, I feel like there was always some theme of suppression or victimization going on for at least the last 100 years. And that's all over the globe. We've had world wars, we've had cultural repressions, we've had, even in the 60s, sexual repression, and women were liberated. So many things where you've seen liberation be a theme over the last 100 years. And now that we have this huge amount of Aries energy coming in and Uranus also going into an air sign, liberation is the name of the game. On the last show, I asked, what does freedom look like to you? On this show, I'm going to ask, what does power look like to you? What does taking back your power really feel like? And where in your life have you let your power go? Where have you allowed your power to be diminished? Really important questions. So I've been working on taking my power back probably my whole life. I was very repressed as a child and then had a lot of experiences happening to me in my life that were very tragic. But there are people out there who've had much more tragic experience than I have. My abuse in my life has been, somewhat physical, but mostly emotional. But for a long time, I think when we come off of those wounds, right? And it could be, anything, you were bullied in school or called names or whatever it is, those wounds stay with us for a lifetime. And I think what has happened and what the culture was a lot globally was really focusing on victimization. Even now, we have a lot of political things going on in the world where we're really hyper focused on victims. And I think taking back our power, the first step is stepping out of that victim mentality. And I think for many of us who were schooled in that or conditioned in that kind of an environment, it's hard to release that victim mentality because we think it keeps us safe in a way, right? It runs patterns for us in our life. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in tonight's show because I think it's a really interesting dynamic. And I think once we can get past being in that victim mentality, victimhood, and it comes at us in very subtle ways. But once we get past that, whole life changes. It's a completely different perspective. The reason why I wanted to do this show was not just because personally I tap into the energy and see where I am and then hopefully have something important to say to inspire others, but because I do see this happening collectively as a shift in the world. I'm seeing that this is almost like a global exhaustion now with victim consciousness. Like people are pointing it out, people are calling it out, people are fed up with it. And while that may not be the best octave of the energy, it's good because it means that it's ending. And I think that that's something that has to end in order for a lot of people to step into their personal power. This is also a collective hunger for power and agency, not in the sense of like, countries taking over countries and the might is right. We see that going on, of course. But the movement I'm talking about is individual. It's people kind of standing up and saying, I don't want this to be my life anymore. I'm not comfortable with this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm seeing this occur over and over again in people I work with, in friends, family, even just you see it in conversations that you might have out there in the general public. There's definitely a movement going on where people are starting to see a change of perspective, an alternate. I had a discussion with someone today about that, just an alternate perspective. And about a year ago, I started to really feel this deeply. And it was almost as though you're standing on the top of a mountain and you're looking down at this beautiful scenery or just the scenery in general. And then you come down off the mountain and you cross the valley and you go up the mountain that was adjacent to the mountain that you're just on, directly opposite across. And now you stand on that mountain and you're looking at the same scene below you, but you're looking at it from a completely different perspective. It's an alternate view, but it is something that you've never quite seen before because you always looked at the view from that other mountain. And that started to happen to me in a really big way about a year, maybe a little more than a year ago, where all of a sudden, just without provocation, without conscious thought, I started to see something from a really different angle. And it opened up my life in ways that were really beneficial. And I think it was that collective hunger that I'm seeing in the collective, in the globe now, for that personal power. Like, we don't have to look at things from that mountain. That's not the only mountain in the world. We can come off that and find another mountain, or even look at something from the ground or from above. We can find a different perspective. And it's almost like we're encased in this frozen ice structure. I'm going to use that analogy since I'm in a blizzard today. And we're functioning in that. And then all of a sudden, something, maybe a higher power, maybe divine timing, something divinely was orchestrated and tapped on that icicle, that big ice thing that we were in, and showed us, wait a second, I have the power to step out of this. I have the power to look at things from whatever angle I want. I don't have to look at things through what you say and you say and you say. I can be my own person. And that's also really the Pluto and Aquarian energy. I say I'm not going to do a lot of astrology, but it's my life. Pluto and Aquarius is embracing the uniqueness, embracing the purple dinosaur. Yeah. Embracing, hey, I want to have pink hair. Yeah. But also embracing that we're allowed to do that. And so's the other person. And that's okay. And so we're in this collective movement, is what I want to call it, where people are really finding a new way to live. That's the ice coming off the roof, a new way to live, and also realizing they can be in control of that. It's almost like suddenly we just had our eyes open, or, the blinders taken off, and we're all being asked to live a new way. What once was, and the past that we so painstakingly were surviving in, isn't good enough anymore. We're different. Our life looks different. The future looks different. And so it's time to take back our power so that we can really use this energy to our full potential and find that new way of living and find that new perspective. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we got to wake up to truth. And that's the movement I also see in the world right now. We are waking up to truth. And I don't just mean truth about, oh, this government is, gaslighting us, or my culture is really not, moving with the future. I don't mean that. I mean that we have a collective energy right now where we need to see the truth and also see it in our personal life. Truth number one, no one's coming to save us. No one's coming to save us. Not our government, not our, parents, not our teachers, priests, clergymen, children. No one's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. We have to have the power within ourselves to see what that means, saving ourselves. And basically, what it means is, how are you going to give yourself security? How are you going to give yourself your best life? And so once we realize that no one's coming to save us, then waiting is no longer a strategy. And believe me, I was guilty of that. I thought, oh, someone will come along, or someone will fix this, or this is too heavy for me to lift. Someone eventually will help me lift this. Even if that was metaphoric, it wasn't an actual heavy object. It was something that maybe was a burden for me. Like, this person can ease my life, and I'm gonna, allow them to do that, because then I don't have to really do it. I'm just going to wait for them to pick up the piece. And that's not a path forward. Blame. Sometimes we get stuck in blame. We don't see the truth. We wallow in that wound of what was done to us. We are, maybe away from that particular incident or tragedy years, and we're still talking about it. We're still like, oh, I can't do that. Don't you know what happened to me? I had cancer. Or, oh, my child abandoned me, or my spouse abandoned me, or I grew up without a father. I was adopted. I had scars. I was in a fire. Whatever it might be. Those are horrible things. But when we live in them, we're not really facing our truth, are we? And then avoidance. We all practice the avoidance. Like I just said, oh, someone else will come and do the heavy lifting, right? Hello? 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 Sorry about that, guys. I had a power spike for a minute, and I had to test my microphone. So sorry, you're getting like 20 minutes of 20 seconds of dead air. All right. So what I was saying is avoidance. That's a big one. I think I've probably done that a lot in my life, but you don't know you're doing it when you're doing it, because it can be very subtle. But avoidance can be something as simple as, we allow someone to talk to us in a certain way or treat us a certain way, and we just keep avoiding it, because we want to get along, go along to get along, right? As the saying goes. So now this collective movement comes in, and it's about, I'm done giving my power away. I'm done not saying anything when I should really speak up. I'm done accepting the behaviors that really diminish me. And we stop the avoidance. We stop making ourselves smaller to fit in somewhere. We stop allowing someone to diminish us. And what happens is, when we let go of that helplessness, we go into agency. When we let go of the confusion, we get clarity. When we let go of the collapse, letting ourself collapse in on ourself, right? How many times we allowed someone to treat us poorly, and then we go home afterwards and we're just like depressed and upset and weepy and sad. When we give up that collapsing in on ourselves, we find courage. So all of these things are really, put in place so that, I'm going to put my notes over here so I don't have to keep looking down. All these things are put into place so that we move forward, because what's happening is all those patterns are keeping us stuck and stagnant. And that's been something that I've come into a realization, especially, I've been doing this work my whole life, live my best life, but in trying to create my best life. But in the last year or so, this has been so prominent. And so if you find yourself in that kind of victim mentality, or feeling badly because things are done to you, or your family's treated you poorly, or whatever it is, and it's resulting in you being helpless, it's resulting in you, collapsing in on yourself, being depressed, being in a situation where you are feeling less than. What's really happening is you're abandoning yourself. You are not stepping into your power. And I know it's hard because these things hurt us and we're living in the wound. But as soon as we end the illusion that we have to live there, things start to change. Then it's the end of avoidance. It's the end of self-abandonment. It's the end of our victim story. And it's really important for us to stop abandoning ourselves in that way, because if you're like me, born certain years, you have Pluto and Virgo. And Pluto and Virgo is all about the abandonment story. We've all been abandoned in some way. Our emotional needs weren't met. And I hate to sound tired when I say that, but that's been the theme for the last million years. And now it's time to get out of that, because it has to sound more like my emotional needs were not met. Maybe I stayed too long in that relationship and I knew that, but I stayed there anyway. I abandoned myself. That person didn't just abandon me. And maybe it becomes that self-abandonment of, at work, I always let someone else take credit for what I do. I never speak up. No one ever sees me at work. I don't know what's wrong with these people. Well, you're not speaking up. There's something wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with you. You just have wounds that have resulted in the conditioning that you should stay quiet, not assert yourself, not take your position. But you're here. And that's part of the Aries energy also, is I am here. I am here. Where do you want to take up space? Do you want to take up space where you go home and you cave in on yourself and you feel really mad and you feel really bad because you didn't take credit? You didn't step up into the space that you rightfully deserved. Instead, you stayed in a space that wasn't good enough for you. And so you can see how the victim mentality flips over into, wait a minute, I need to take self-responsibility. I'm not have control here. I can live a different life. And it's a really deep, really long, sometimes road to get to there. But once you do, it goes very fast. Your life really changes. And also along the same lines of that, the thought that I was just having was, the wounds keep us stuck, and the wounds keep us in the victim mentality, so we can't take our power back. But also those wounds are very real to us. We keep looking for someone to make them better. And remember the first rule, no one's coming to save you. You have to kind of heal yourself. I mean, not even kind of, you have to heal yourself. Because taking responsibility for healing those wounds yourself means they'll stop. They'll stop hurting. You'll stop living stuck. And the way we take care of our wounds is we change the story. We start speaking up at work. We start saying something when someone speaks to us badly. We start not accepting less than what we deserve. And it sounds easy. It's not. But what I will tell you is that it's more easy in this energy than it's ever been before, because the current energy is in support and in favor of us all stepping into this. And that's why it's a movement. If we keep clinging to the old stories, we're going to keep stuck. We're never going to live to our full potential. We can't stay small and expect expansion. We can't stay small and expect someone to acknowledge us. We can't stay in the wound and expect someone to heal us. Do you see how all of this is kind of coordinating to keep us stuck? And so we have to stop waiting for all these things to change and start to take action. And that is an Aries word, action. So against that backdrop of Neptune and Aries, it's a maturation of identity. We're all stepping into a new identity. In my last show, I talked about how the world it's a whole new world. And it is inside of each of us. If we allow it and we open to it and we surrender and understand that the universe is far more wise and loving than we are to ourselves sometimes, and that we abandon ourselves, we make ourselves look small, we accept less than what we deserve. And that's why we feel that way, because we allow it to keep continuing. We have the power to stop it at any time. It's just flicking a light switch and saying, I'm worth more. I am better than this. I can go after more. And it's a very deep accomplishment. For me, it was years in the making and small steps, baby steps. Now I'm beyond that. I will say that with every bit of pride. Um, I don't have a lot of things in my life that make me feel small. The things that are still left, I am working on removing them. And that doesn't mean I cancel them. It means that I learn how to love myself in some environments that can be harsh. I learn to choose my battles. I learn to always give myself and fulfill my own emotional needs, no matter what environment or situation I'm in. It's a very deeply personal, intimate, and something between myself and I. I've also learned to fulfill a lot of my emotional needs through God, through spirit, through my belief system, meditation, yoga, channeling, automatic writing, psychic ability, all of those things that connect me with the source that made me. And, like people always say, God doesn't make any junk. So why do we treat ourselves like that? I remember when I was in an extremely tragic time in my life. Um, I really didn't have much personal power, and I was coming out of some very, very deep grief. And I remember going to a very good friend of mine who was also a healer, and she said to me, Georgia, why are you doing this to yourself? And I'm like, I didn't. All these people, my life is wrecked because of this one and that one and this one. And she said to me, but it's past. It's time for you to change that story. And she said to me, would you take a hammer to a Van Gogh? Because she knew I was a big Van Gogh fan at the time. I was reading about him and I was studying all his art. I said, I would never take a hammer to a Van Gogh. And she said, well, then why are you taking a hammer to the masterpiece that God made? That's you. And she showed me that I was slowly destroying myself by staying in the victimhood and staying in the stuckness of just being in the wounds. And that has always stuck with me. And when I get really down or something really, hard to navigate happens, I think about that. And I say, no, 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 I'm a miraculous masterpiece. I am going to find the energy and the power to do this with co-creation with God. And I know I don't use the G word on the show a lot because some people are offended by it, believe it or not. I don't know how you can be offended by God, but that's just me, my opinion, not everyone's. And so spirit, sometimes I call God, that is God to me. I connect with spirit. Spirit speaks to us and he'll speak to all of us. And so in that, we can really take ourselves out of the victimhood. We can take ourselves out of the wound because God shows us divinity and he shows us joy and beauty and happiness and radiance and love that we can't even imagine so deep. And that's a great way to rewrite our story. Also, what that friend and mentor did for me that day was she switched me out of self-pity into self-responsibility. And a lot of times, pity doesn't have to look like, that person that is crying a river and, can't get out of their own way. It doesn't have to look like that. Sometimes pity can just look like no one ever understands me. No one ever sees me, right? That's a little bit of pity. This broad fatalistic idea of no one and never can be pitiful. And in the words of Joyce Meyer, you can't be powerful and pitiful at the same time. So you've got to make sure and check yourself every once in a while that you're not in that pity party. It's okay to have a pity party if you really need one, but put a time limit on it. 10 minutes tops, and then you're going to pull up your bootstraps and get going. So what I'm talking about, and it's really Aries energy, especially with Saturn and Neptune there, is the responsibility to step into who you really are. And I chose those words step into because Aries energy is all about where do you want to take up space? I am present here. I am present. So what is it going to take for you to step into who you're really supposed to be? And I say it on every show. Who you're really supposed to be doesn't mean you're supposed to be like a famous Hollywood Oscar-winning actress or the greatest sports person ever lived. Who you're supposed to be is just what feels authentic to you, what makes you happy. And, that could be anything from buying a dog to going out and playing in the snow today to just be who you are, as long as it is expanding love in your life and expanding self-love and the responsibility you have to take for ourselves to come out of the down, the darkness, the sadness. So this movement that I speak of, I am seeing everyone find it in some way. It's coming from within. It's almost as though God came down and, went boop, 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 and gave us all a little bit of pixie dust to play with. And I'm seeing right before my eyes the dissolution of false identities. It's a good thing. It's also a very scary thing for some people. We struggle with it. I myself, just in a physical way, in the last few days, as soon as we had that huge energy of that conjunction of Neptune and Saturn in Aries, and this energy, like I say, it's very nervous energy. I'm sitting in my own living room and I feel like I know it's my living room and it looks like my living room, but God, it feels like someplace else. Really weird sensations. And I think it's a dissolution of the identity. Um, I am still sitting in the living room. I am still in the same place, but I'm different. And that's what it is. The room isn't different. I'm different. And it feels different because of that. It's like that analogy I gave in the beginning of the mountain. I think I changed mountains. And I think I may have moved a few. And it's a great feeling. And I know that every single person standing on the earth right now can do that. A lot of them have already, and far more greater than me. But it's a great feeling when you suddenly see the new perspective and you realize your whole life is opened up and you have the power to do whatever you want to do in order to create that life that you really want to be. Maybe you don't like where you're living and you want a smaller place, or maybe you want a bigger place, or maybe you just want to live in a different place, or maybe you don't want to speak the same way to somebody, or maybe you want a different job, or maybe you just want to be different at the job you have. Whatever it is, now we have permission to step into our authenticity more so than we've ever had before. It's our birthright. We've always had it, but now the universe is really giving us that push on our back and really allowing us to find the discipline to become who we truly are. It's the end of ego stories. And this gets back to the dissolution of identity. This is why you're seeing so many things play out in the global world, in the media, of people losing power. Anything that's deceitful or dishonest, you're going to see is going to collapse and unravel. And even if it's something that you have disliked and you have been waiting to unravel for a long time, there's a lot of bad, evil things in the world. Put love there, because we don't want that energy of destruction, the energy of um, uh, harshness, pain, persecution. We don't want that expanded. So whenever we see something fall from grace, something, coming out of a situation that has been deceitful or evil, just put love there in a way where we say, it's time for this to go. We don't need this in our world anymore. Please replace it with the highest octave of energy that we can have. And that's progressive and movement into the future, Pluto and Aquarius. And the last part of this movement, which is so cool, I'm seeing everywhere, is, I'm looking for the right word. It's a spiritual awakening of the self. And I know we all have spiritual awakenings, gurus, all these things. I mean, I'm seeing astrology and all kinds of people on media come out of the woodwork. I don't make a judgment about what's authentic and what's not. But what I can tell you is that for ourselves, deep inside, we're having spiritual awakenings. And I'm not saying like a kumbaya moment, or you're, seeing a statue talk or whatever. I'm just talking about spiritual awakening like I was just describing. We're different. We're not going to tolerate things the way we were. And all of these things add up to one huge thing, which is the birth of the rebirth. And that is that we're not defined by the wound anymore, whatever your wound is. Self-abandonment, deprivation, abandonment, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, whatever. I mean, name it. I don't even like to put it all out there. I don't like to bring the energy in. But whatever your wound is, maybe it was ignorance or apathy or bullying or whatever your wound is, we're no longer defined by it anymore. It's like we went down the mountain and came up another mountain and we're looking at the same scenario and we're like, wait a minute, I am over that. It's time for me to live my life. And that is the movement that I'm seeing. We're not defined by the wound, we're defined by the wisdom. And that's what we're getting a lot of. In this energy, we are definitely finding ourselves reclaiming our power. We have the wisdom to do it. We're finally seeing the truth. We're seeing it, and it's coming into our faces in a very bold way with so much clarity that we just can't tolerate it anymore. You know, it's like we finally saw that our shoelace has been untied, and now we can't walk around with a shoelace untied. And it's been untied for years, and we've just didn't really, we decided to avoid it or ignore it, or maybe we saw it once or twice, and we're like, yeah, I can walk around with the shoe open, it's okay. And now we can't. We got to tie the shoe. We got to make everything right. And this leads me to something else that is the death of. It's not just the death of the victim mentality. With that comes the death of the savior mentality. And when we're in victim mentality, a strange complexes start to get run. And have you ever been like, if we're wounded or we're in trauma, a lot of times we take on a lot of energy that's not ours. You walk in the room and people are in a bad mood and immediately you're like, oh my God, what did I do? Was this something I said? Maybe they found out I said this, or did somebody tell them this? Or we walk in a room like that and we immediately think, I can fix this. I'm going to have everyone play charades, or I'm going to put on some music, or I'm going to light some San Palo, or I'm going to tell a joke. Now we're the savior. We've been managing everyone else's emotional energy our whole lives. And now we're not going to do it anymore. You want to be mad? Be mad. I didn't do anything. You want to be critical, hypercritical? Okay, well, I'm not taking in your hypercriticism because I know who I am and I'm a good person and I tie my shoes okay. I'm sorry you don't like the way I make bows, but I think it looks really pretty. That's the movement, that movement of energy. It's a movement of energy and it's moving all of us. And so that savior mentality, which has also been keeping us stuck, because while we're managing everyone else's emotional energy and trying to save the day, save the world, save Christmas, save the vacation, save everybody, we're abandoning ourselves. All that energy and all that time is time that we didn't use to create our own life and step into our full potential and take back our power, our momentum. Critical, critical times, critical energy. And so this is what I've been thinking about in my spare time, guys. So what does reclaiming our power look like? Well, for me, it looks like a few things. I'm going to tell you what it feels like and looks like for me. So for me, it's about choice. It's about choices, like everything from what I eat to where I go to what time I go to what I really want to do. And about a year and a half ago, I started to just sometimes answer, no, I'm not going to do that. Zip it. No other explanation. People would say, oh, we're all getting tickets to go to blah, blah, blah. You coming? No, I don't really feel like doing that. I used to always join and do it all because it was like, oh, had FOMO or fear of missing out, or I was like, oh, they're not going to invite me anymore if I don't go, or all those things. I don't do that anymore. Now I really look at it and I think, is this something I really want to do? Is this the best use of my time? Is this where I want to take up space? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And I respond accordingly. So for me, taking my power back was a lot about choice. Even when I go clothes shopping, I would have a tendency to buy something because it will look right. I don't really like it. It's just what everyone else had, or it's like the right color that someone once told me looked good on me. No, now I'm like, will I really wear this? That kind of thing. Also choices with what my food, when I want to go do something, sometimes people want to do something really early in the morning. I don't really like that. I like doing things later in the day. So I'll say now, well, I'd love to do that, but can we do it a little bit later? I speak up. I own myself. I'm responsible for myself and my outcomes. It also is about owning patterns without shame. This happened to me. Yes, this was done to me. It happened. I have a wound. I am dealing with the wound the best I can. I now step into a place where the wound doesn't run my life. Sometimes I feel hurt, and sometimes I can have a sad day because that really happened. I've owned it. But it doesn't make every day sad. It doesn't make me respond to things in a certain way. It's not running my life. That's power to me. Choosing courage over comfort. That is a big one. I always think about in 2015 when I was in Aruba with my friend Margaret, and I, for some reason, on a very windy day, decided that it was time to go parasailing. Yeah. I remember standing on the beach, saying to myself as they're waiting to, rig it up and everything starts to get more windy and windy. And Margaret was questioning it a little bit, but I poo-pooed her avoidance. And I sat on the beach and I was pacing, I stood on the beach and I was pacing back and forth. And I said, I'm afraid of heights and I hate the feeling of nothing being under my feet. It freaks me out. I even sleep with like my dog or a pillow on my feet. But you know what? I'm really tired of being afraid of those things. And I'm meeting my fears. This is what these next years are about for me. And I'm just going to go do it. And I bent down and there was a little piece of coral in the sand, which I picked up for like good luck. And when I bent down next to it was a clothespin because they had used them to hang stuff up to dry on the beach at this little shack where they had the parasailing. And there was a little clothespin and it had the words written on it, soul free. And I have it on my mantle with coral. And I was like, this is all about getting my soul free. And that's what taking back your power is about. And so that was the day I realized choosing courage over comfort is sometimes very, very rewarding. Scary as hell. I can tell you the whole story some other day about that parasailing event because I shouldn't have been up there in the first place, but I survived. And yeah, choose courage over comfort. The reward is absolutely amazing and it gives you more courage for the next thing. So it gets easier. And then speaking your truth without apology, I have a habit still of prefacing things with like, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, or I don't want to piss you off, or I don't mean to hurt you, but Georgia, just say it. Take your power in, say it. I'm learning that slowly. Still one of my things. Um, Making decisions that align with my future, not my past. I check myself about this all the time. This is something I've been doing for about 3 or 4 years now, very, very consciously. When I have to make a decision about something, whether it's buying a new car or something with my home or work or career or Zenkuda, I think, does this match the agenda I want for my future? Or is this something that reeks of the past? Is this something that speaks more about the way I used to be, the mistakes I used to make, or the safety that I thought I used to have? And then I make my decision accordingly as long as it aligns with my future and not my past. And that's a big one. And then also refusing to abandon myself and catching myself, when I start to acquiesce and I start to give in to things or I start to just go along to get along. Now, sometimes we all have to do that. We have to choose our battles. But most of the time, I catch myself if it's something that I know is going to cause me pain later or make me feel less than later or make me feel like I diminished myself later or make me feel like I'm beating myself up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Why didn't you say that? Now I live with myself and in my own energy. And so I speak when I need to speak and I never abandon myself, even in any way. If someone is abusing me or is harsh to me, I leave that place. I don't stay. And I do it in a very loving way. I see that you're having a hard time now, or I see that you're in pain now, or I see that this is something we're going to disagree about. I'm going to call you tomorrow. I don't cancel people. I try to just go into a place of love because I want that in my life. And I want people to give me love when maybe I'm being stubborn or angry or whatever. Because don't we all need that? So this is what you say to yourself when you're trying to really be powerful and take back your power in your life. I choose me. I choose me. And whenever I say that out loud, I always feel like crying because it has been such a long road for me. But I would say, definitely the last decade, absolutely the last 3 years, I time and time again choose me, and it is now the go-to. It's my default. It's no longer the wound or the past. I choose me. And I choose my life and I choose my direction. And I would oftentimes, being a Libra sun, I oftentimes would wait and procrastinate and hope, or subconsciously, that someone else would make the choice for me. Now I make my own choices. So what I want to say is that when you take your power back, you're really finding purpose. Your life becomes more meaningful. But purpose isn't something that just happens subtly. Purpose is something that you have to activate. And what I was just explaining about the choices and consciously, the phrases I even say to myself, those are things I do to activate my power because that puts me in purpose. What is my real purpose in doing this particular thing or this particular choice? It is to bring myself forward into more love, more expansion, more success, more potential, more happiness. Is this doing that? Litmus test. Check, check, check. Yes. Okay, then I'm bringing it forward. And it's work. It's a lot of work. It's tiring sometimes, but it's worth every bit of it because the life that you have from operating in this way, and when this becomes your operating system, this becomes the movie you are living in instead of the past movie with the shame and the blame and the discomfort and the diminishing. Now you're in your own movie, your own agency, your own creation. And once you start to feel that, you are never giving that up. You just can't go back. It's just not going to happen. So, a couple of things I'm going to tell you because everyone's like, well, where do you start? So, you don't need clarity to begin. You really don't. You need truth. You're not going to have clarity in the beginning because you've still got all the baggage. Like I still have baggage. Sometimes I have days when I'm like, I do not know what I'm doing. What am I doing? But you need willingness. And I remember another mentor, beautiful woman, Teresa, who is passed now, helped me so much in my business life and with other things as well. When I would be like in that confused part of my life, which now I have come to understand, confusion is a good thing because it means something's changing. You're not stuck anymore. When you're confused, you're not stuck. But she would say to me all the time when I get into these places where, the world is happening and things are moving and too many moving parts, and I didn't know, really how to move forward. She would say to me, get up every day and just put one foot in front of the other and just forward motion, forward motion. And that has stayed with me probably for a good 25 years. And it's one of my things that I always go back to, one of my go-tos. And I say to myself, okay, okay, breathe. How can you move forward today? And it works really well. I've had experiences where like, I'm in clutter and I'm maybe moving or doing something and you're in that place and you don't know what to do first and you're trying to take your power and then just breathe and say, okay, forward. How can I put one foot in front of the other here? And one bit at a time you do that. Again, you don't need confidence. It's courage, all right? Courage, courage, courage. And don't overthink it. Like a lot of times when I work with people in my coaching, they want to like plan out a year. That's good to do, but when we make plans, God laughs. So you have to have alternate, right? The other side of the mountain, alternate view, different perspective, right? So you don't need everything figured out. You need your first step. Today I am going to do this, right? You have to move a house. You have to change jobs. Today I'm going to plan my route. Today I'm going to pack one box. You need that. You don't need, how am I going to pack up this whole house? Or how am I going to take over this position? I've never done this before. You just need your first step sometimes. And that's helped me a lot because I have a tendency to really go way out in the future. I'm a Sagittarius and we like want to go way out, Sagittarius rising. Purpose is not a destination. It's a direction. So when you're looking for your power, what direction do you need to go in order to feel that purposefulness? And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is momentum isn't speed. And that's really important because we're in a very speeded up time right now. Everything feels very speeded up. So don't confuse momentum with movement. Don't confuse activity with accomplishment. Running around, stuffing 10 pounds of things in a 5-pound bag is not really, momentum. That's just a recipe for disaster. You want to make sure that you are giving yourself a direction that has movement to it, that has a purpose. And then also be careful of being impulsive in this energy because it is so fast. So if I had to give myself a mantra for these next 6 months, or maybe to the end of the year, I would say the mantra would be one aligned step at a time. One aligned step at a time. Just you always need that first step and the next first step and the next first step and the next first step. And then before you know it, you've got a whole road paved. And I think that's a really good mantra for the way the energy is right now. So action items, how do you do this? Well, when you leave this podcast, what things to think about? Um, First thing is, where is one place in your life that you can start to take your power back? What's that one place where you've been giving your power away? Maybe it's something as simple as you have a teenager and you don't like the way they speak to you. It's never too late to take your power back. It could be a relationship. It could be a belief, right? Maybe your family expects you to believe a certain way and you really don't. It could be a fear, like me with the power sailing. Like I was pumped for months after that, you know. It could just, excuse me, it could just be a story, you know. Maybe you've been living with a certain story so long that it's just you didn't realize it until recently that you don't have to live in that story. Maybe you lose power there. Change the story. So here's a couple of things. Instead of I can't do that, I can learn to do that. That is a big thing in my life because as we get older, it's harder and harder to learn things. I feel there's too much. I always say my brain has too much in it, but we have to. We can't stop learning. And with Uranus going into Gemini, there's going to be a lot of curiosity to help us with that. So it's not I can't do it. It's I can learn to do it, right? Or say to yourself, I'm learning. I'm learning how to do this. I'm learning how to this. What this first step is going to teach me because I'm learning how to do this. Instead of I'm stuck, choose what's next. Instead of saying I'm stuck, I don't know how to get out of my way. I can't figure this out. Say, I will choose what's next and think about what your next step is going to be. This week, until we meet again next Monday, I implore all of you to take one courageous step somewhere. Take one courageous step, whether that's speaking up or doing something or, putting a boundary in place or whatever it is, talking to someone about a situation you don't really want to talk to them about, whatever. It's your thing. It's your life. It's your agency. It's your life. Take control. So our soul evolves through action. The soul can't evolve when it's stuck. The soul evolves through learning, through wisdom. It evolves through events, right? It's action that evolves our soul. The soul needs experience. When the soul doesn't have experience, it stagnates. And so does your power, because our power is from our soul space. So keep that in mind when you diminish yourself, abandon yourself, allow yourself to be in something less than what you deserve. That lack of inertia needs movement in order for you to be powerful. In order for the soul to grow, it needs movement. And so remember that it's our responsibility to make sure the soul is getting the movement it needs to grow. And my final thought in reclaiming our power, becoming the author of our life, letting go of the victim story, writing a new one, is that power lives in our body. And this is a great time for us to start to get healthy, whether that's a daily walk or whatever it is, because when we're weak in the body, and I know some of us, of course, have, health issues that we need to honor. We're not always going to be strong, and that's okay. But whatever you can do, allow yourself to feel movement and feel power in the body, because that's where a lot of our power comes from, when we move energy. And if you sometimes feel stuck, sometimes just getting up and walking or moving around the room or assuming a power pose, right? Standing straight, mountain pose, and putting your hands on your hips. And all of a sudden you'll feel a lot more powerful. Bring those kind of movements into when you are feeling confused or very emotional or sad or in grief or thinking about the victim things that, are wounds. Bring yourself into a position in the body that feels powerful for you. Bring yourself into a place of power physically, where you feel powerful. And that's why so many people lift weights, which is also important as I get older. But having that, muscle is because a lot of our power mentally and emotionally and soul power comes from the physical body. So I just wanted to say that to you, and I'm going to leave you with this. And I hope if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I will answer everything. You can also reach me on social media on Zenkuda Soul Space and also Zenkuda Official on Instagram. If you'd like to book a reading, because in the chart I can always identify wounds and where your power is and how to get it back, book a reading at Zenkuda.com. And I am just going to leave you with this almost a prayer today, because words are prayers, is let's just do one thing in the next few minutes together, and that's trust our ability to create change. It is so powerful, and we are so powerful. And Spirit God is giving us a beautiful, beautiful place of energy in our universe right now in the current times to step into our agency and our full potential. Let go of what's holding us back. Stop confusing safety with restriction. Those things that we think are so secure, they're probably holding us back. So, whatever your own version of parasailing is, go to it. Thanks so much. I will see you next week at 7 o'clock on Monday nights, and hopefully be live if there's no more blizzards. Take care. I am Georgia Rose from Zenkuda, and you can find me at zenkuda.com. Bye-bye.